What's up, everybody? Welcome to this next episode of Scofie Sessions. I am your host, Scofie, Jonathan Schofield, and this is my shameless excuse to hang out with peers, colleagues, subject matter experts, folks in the industry that I find incredibly fascinating who have something insightful and valuable to share. I'm so glad that you're here. Today's special guest, I'm very excited to introduce, is Matthew Weir. And he's going to take a moment to introduce himself in a little more detail, who he works for, he's all about here in a second. But if you are here today, either you're scrolling LinkedIn and YouTube and you just happen to stumble across the stream, or you found it and the algorithm blessed you with this content later, or you knew about it in advance when we invited you to this, and you added it to your calendar and you're watching with us now. If you are watching with us now, say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And we hope that you can enjoy this time together and get some really great value out of it. Chris, I already see you in the comments, a gentleman and a scholar. Glad to have you with us. And Terrell Jackson as well. Welcome, my man. So glad you guys are here. And anybody else who stumbles in, I'm going to give Matthew an opportunity to introduce himself. But before we jump into that, the subject matter for today: spoons, shovels, or backhoes, IT service delivery. Stop suffering, start scaling. That's a mouthful. It's a lot to unpack there. But if you are an IT service provider, you work with IT service providers, or you use or need an IT service provider, then this episode may be for you. And the idea of delivering services and the challenges that are facing those providers and partners in the space. So if that's you, you found your people. Glad that you're here. We also have Randy. Welcome, Randy. Glad you're here. Okay, Matthew, with no further ado, I'd like you to take just a moment, a minute or two. Tell us everything that strangers who've never met you need to know about Matthew.
Yeah, no pressure. So a lot of stuff. So my name is Matthew Weir, and I am a fractional CTO. I also function as a fractional CISO for some. And I have spent about the last 10 or so years in the MSP/MSSP environment and vertical, whatever you want to call it. And have learned a lot through a lot of battle scars. So what I do now is essentially the reason that I went with and I pursued the title of CTO is because I really believe that modern computing, like what technology looks like right now, has so much to do with the software world, like the development world. And so I've always really kind of honed in and keyed into that. And so this has kind of put me on this pursuit of pursuing modern infrastructure, trying to reimagine what we do today in like a traditional MSP space, IT space, and what that can look like in a more modern take, like a more I'll actually kind of say like software SaaS take. And so in short, I've been developing that mindset for a long time, and I tried to apply as much of that to the last MSP that I was employed at. And I stepped away from that a couple of years ago. And I started doing fractional CTO for a bunch of different MSPs. And that has been a blast. And so basically what I'm doing is I'm looking at their businesses and how they're delivering their services. Probably some helpful context is the MSP I was a part of sold to private equity. We did very well. And so I'm just taking like those strategies and lessons learned and applying those to lots of other MSPs and MSSPs. Additionally, I have a couple of non-MSP clients. And I think, I'm sure we'll get into that more, but you'll hear me say a lot that I really think it's important to have sort of like a foot outside of MSP. I think that it's really easy to get sort of inundated with like what everyone else around you does for everything. And it sort of like limits your imagination on how to reimagine how things could be done. So taking all this stuff, and I'm trying to help MSPs make more money by getting rid of what I believe to be some legacy stupid.
Legacy stupid. Okay, so much to unpack there. Thank you so much for sharing that. Real quick, the name of your business right now, Matthew. Share it with the
Uh,
class.
yeah, Fulcrum Insights, and it's fulcruminsights.io.
Somebody grab that and drop it in the chat. Jess, if you're watching, grab that and drop it in the chat. If you're watching today and you work for an IT provider, you own your own business, mention your business name as well, and let's spread the love on socials. Glad that you're with us. So you got some battle scars. I want to unpack some of those scars a little bit, and then you made the bold statement, helping MSPs get rid of legacy stupid. This is a great springboard for this discussion. Okay. The legacy stupid, when we're talking about suffering versus scaling, and you've spent some time in the trenches with an MSP that exited in not so distant past. What was the status quo as you saw it in the industry from your vantage point in the trenches working for an MSP? Let's spend a little bit of time in the status quo that you experienced in that world.
Yeah. So I guess maybe I'm trying to think through the best way to answer that. I guess it's kind of, you're sort of expected to just rebuild everything as it was, but newer, I think is maybe the easiest way to say that. So let's say, like, you're looking at some infrastructure for some client and they're all like server 2003 or 2008 and they're like physical servers. So you're like, I'm going to, redo the whole thing. And basically what we meant by that is like buy new servers and put newer OSs on them. Or if we're going to get fancy, put those newer OSs on VMs in Azure. And it's like, now we've modernized them, quote, quote. Which, obviously, like, abstracting away from hardware is great. But yeah, I think like the status quo would just be the quickest way to summarize that, would just be to upgrade what we already had, just sort of like move it forward instead of reimagining it.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
And how would you? No, that's great. That's great. Legacy stupid. So as you looked at your peers around you and some of your own experiences, what are some of the most egregious examples of that legacy stupid that you'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, I'll get you a good one. All right, so yeah, that's a good question. All right, so I've seen in the not so distant past where there was a requirement for SQL, and the specific application that needed SQL, and hopefully we're all nerds here, and when I say SQL, I don't need to qualify that too much, but I can if you want me to, so just let me know. They needed SQL Server for some app, and it was being custom made, so there's lots of options here, right? We weren't like boxed into like what a vendor would allow us to do, what the application was limited to. We could sort of design it, right? And they were standing up a Microsoft SQL cluster in Azure.
Mm-hmm.
And this was going to be pretty heavy lift, like some pretty heavy like IOPS. Like it was a heavy app that they were forecasting. And Azure cost estimates were looking between like $5,000 and $8,000 a month.
Right.
I started going through the requirement, and I was noticing that there wasn't a requirement for Microsoft SQL. That was just, it was an IT guy that was architecting it, right? And by the way, no shade to like IT guys. I'm going to say like IT guy a lot. And I don't mean shade by this, but I do. There is a sort of a bit of stuck that I'm going to try to highlight in like IT guy culture, right? So it's like nothing against you. I think this is like a really good time for all of us to learn and evolve. So we had like an IT guy, probably like IT manager might be like the best way to describe that person, that had architected this, and they're familiar with Windows OS, with Azure, with Microsoft SQL, right? Like MS SQL. Really unaware of, in development space, like in SaaS world, there's a lot of options. And probably good context that I should say out loud is I have a development team. We make custom software every day. We have some cool stuff going right now. And so over here in this land, I'm surrounded by like these very senior like developer guys that like have no idea anything about IT and cybersecurity. And I am talking to these guys every day. And when I say get out of IT guy headspace or whatever, or that you should have a foot outside of MSP. This is kind of what I'm getting to. But anyway, so I'm in this world, right? And so when they talk about architecture, they talk about infrastructure. They have absolutely no idea that a Microsoft SQL cluster would even be an option, right? So how would they do it? And like, how do we do it over here? Well, there's a whole bunch of options. One of them that I really like is neon.tech. And this is Postgres as a service. It's HA, it's incredibly secure, it's encrypted. You can sandbox it, you can branch it, if you know what that means, which is insane, by the way, that you can branch a database. And I could run this same thing, cost estimates, sub $30 a month.
Wow. So
that's some stupid.
Yeah. And you would attribute that stupid to just a lack of awareness in that particular scenario. Like they just this the thing they knew that they defaulted to. But had they been leveraging a strategic advisor or something like that, or maybe done a little more due diligence, they could have found an alternate route.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, and I a lot of ways the way that a lot of times the way I'll say this is just that like the world has changed. It's like it's not like the IT guys are doing a bad job. Like that was actually that cluster, that was the correct answer. Like that for a long time, that was the correct answer. That wasn't actually them like being stupid. When I say stupid, I just mean in relationship to what's actually available. But if you know to be available is what you know and where you spend all of your time, that was actually the right call. They were abstracting away from physical hardware, right? They had like the first constraint that, you know, kind of like the old system, you know, they're on ESX hosts, they have a data center, right? Like they're doing this, we're going to go to the cloud and we're starting this fresh thing. We want it to be a stable database and a reputable, you know, a place, Microsoft, right? So like this is, but these are all these are Microsoft IT guy solutions.
Yeah.
And unless they had some kind of frame of reference, some kind of like visibility into what else is out there, how would they know that this other platform was actually trustworthy, stable, and secure enough to be an option? Like they wouldn't, right? Because you know, you go look this up, chat GPT it, you know, Google it, YouTube it, whatever you want. And everyone's got an opinion on why this one is great, why this one is great, why this one is bad. And whatever you're looking for, you'll find confirmation. So how do you know what's real? Well, you don't, so you just do what you know. And I just find this over and over and over again. And this is one of the big reasons why I keep this dev team going. Like I'm not like a dev, I'm not trying to make this like huge dev company. In most ways, for me, it is this way to keep a pulse on the other world that's actually moving and doing things like a lot more efficiently and effectively than we do it in IT. So I just think they just don't know, and it's hard to learn because of those things.
Sure. No. I love that example. I'd love for you to maybe share one or two more. But before we jump into much farther here, if you are watching with us, we've gotten some pretty great engagement in the chat. We're so glad you guys are here watching with us, and hopefully this is valuable to you. You probably have an opinion. If you're an IT provider, you work with IT providers, you probably have an opinion on the status quo that quote unquote MSPs or IT service providers are faced with today when it comes to service delivery. And Matthew just highlighted a particular issue. He believes that you don't know what you don't know, or the IT provider doesn't know what they don't know. And maybe there's a lack of awareness for a lot of reasons. You know, first of all, you default to, you know, the things that you're comfortable with, the things you have experience in. And also anyone who's sat in the seat of an MSP before understands that you are responsible 6 ways from Sunday for the well-being of your clients. And oftentimes, even if you had the appetite and initiative to go out and either discover a new skill or architect a new solution or think about something differently, you often don't have the bandwidth, the resources to do so. What's your opinion, if you're watching this today, your experience in the trenches or those in the trenches, that status quo when it comes to service delivery and some of those gaps? Would love to hear from our viewers a little more detail on that. So we spent a little time here in the status quo, Matthew. Now let's talk about the future state for those who are wise enough to start making steps. What's the answer to that IT provider who lives in that world that's stretched 6 ways from Sunday, who's limited by their own experiences and exposure, and probably doesn't have the right kind of bandwidth to go out and do things the way they should. Like, what's the answer?
Yeah, well, I think that the first answer is mindset. There's sort of a mindset problem in IT land. Like, so a really simple example of this, and everyone, well, I don't know everyone, a lot of people will instantly get upset about this comment, but it's going to prove my point. Microsoft fanboys, people that hate Apple. Okay, this is a big thing, right? Almost every single, if I say this out loud in a room full of engineers, everyone's like, Apple sucks, right? Microsoft is the way. So I think the actual first thing to do is that if that triggers you in any way, or you have a strong opinion about that, I think like right now you're currently victim to your own like small world. And until you change that, until like that comment, like you don't have strong feelings about it, until you don't have strong feelings, you can't get out of it. And what I mean by that is that if your mindset, if you were set that you will do what's best, that your goal is what's best, not what you like the most, that you do what's best for the customer, what's best in technology, what's the most scalable. Your goal is just what's best and it's not anything else. You would have no feeling about that, because you would have like, who cares if it's Microsoft or Apple or Cisco or Dell, or like who cares about that? I want what is best and what is proven. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting that like you go run bleeding edge for customers. Maybe not, obviously. So I'm going to say that I'm not suggesting you go run bleeding edge on all of your customers, but I'm suggesting that you get well familiar with bleeding edge, because how do you know what is and isn't bleeding edge if you're so stuck in your own little sphere of the things that you will do and use because it's best practice?
Sure.
You're so far behind that you don't know. And there's like stuff like this all the time. And if I actually just go back to this, like Apple and Microsoft comment here, like Apple reasonably changed the entire world like 6 years ago when they created Rosetta, when they made an on-chip live translation of ARM to x86. I'm sorry, x86 to ARM. Incredible. That changes the whole world, and we're going to see effects of that. Data centers are going to look different for forever because of that. But people are so stuck that Apple sucks and we use Windows.
Yeah.
Like mostly all IT guys like missed this really, really important, absolutely amazing breakthrough that we now have a translation layer from ARM to x86. And Microsoft finally fired back with that. They've taken a bunch of shots at ARM, I know. But how many of us use ARM Microsoft laptops? None of us. Yeah. Or if you are, you can use the browser on it. Right. I desperately want to use an ARM Microsoft laptop because the battery, right? And there's a lot of implications. I'm not going to talk. I would nerd out on that for a long time, by the way. I love ARM. Huge. I'm making a point that that's like a groundbreaking technology that is in no way bleeding edge right now. It's been out for a long time. It's stable, right? But it would get written off so easily just because of that mindset. So I think the first thing is like mindset, that I don't have an opinion on like who is the best. I don't have an opinion. Seeking for the truth of what is best.
Sure. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for just a hot minute. Just because as I'm hearing you talk, I can anticipate what some of our IT provider viewers may be sensing in their gut. You kind of acknowledge maybe you might upset some folks when you said it, which is great. We're here to upset the apple cart a little bit. But from the vantage point of an IT provider, I know for a fact they have people in the industry that are preaching to them. They need to standardize across their operations and service delivery, consolidate, and not be all distracted by everything that's new at all times. And when it comes to, drawing a line in the sand and saying, we are Microsoft, we don't do Apple, or we are X and we don't do Y, that they're actually protecting their scalability to a degree by specializing where they know today they are strongest. But I see your point. I do believe there's probably a balance. You don't want to overextend yourself and always be distracted. You even said yourself, don't put bleeding edge on everything. What's that IT guy to do when he knows he has 75 to 100 SMBs in his portfolio? He has to deliver powerful outcomes to. A handful of those are coming to him with special requests that require maybe specialized architecture or a solution to be engineered that maybe should be thought in a different way. How do they find the balance, Matthew?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, everything that I'm saying is so far has been awareness, knowledge, right? I'm talking about awareness and knowledge, not writing off new things because they're outside of that standard. And I agree with you. Standards are incredibly important, but they also get us stuck at some point. So yeah, so your question is, what's the standard? So for me, this is how I work through that, which is I want to change what is safe quickly. And this this is a difficult part for MSPs, because the main role that it takes to move this forward is what most of us are going to call like VCIO. And the conversations that a VCIO needs to have with the customers for us to start moving are uncomfortable. And they actually take some executive skills, which nearly no VCIO actually has, because they have no executive experience. They're not actually a CIO. Like they're not actually a CISO. They're not actually a CTO. They've just been put into that role with the title because the MSP sold it and we need to fulfill the seat. And we have sort of this like really diluted version that we've all accepted is like, well, it's okay for a VCIO to not have any business acumen whatsoever. And guess what that guy does? He upgrades servers to the latest OS, right? Okay.
Yeah.
What do we do for the client? So when I say the safest way, I want to pursue the safest ways as quickly as possible. I mean, there are plenty of vendors that already have SaaS systems for their old on-prem solutions. And I've seen it literally hundreds of times. I'm telling you, because I work with a lot of people, literally hundreds of times, where they say, well, but the client doesn't want to pay for it. Which is an incredibly short-sighted comment, because what have we done? This thing again, where I'm talking about sort of like like clients hire us because they have admitted to themselves when they spend that money that they are incapable of making technology decisions. So the first thing that we do once they pay us money is let them tell us their IT decisions, their technology decisions, which is crazy, right? Like that's an insane concept, but we're so afraid to tell them what they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And instead of digging that thought apart, like ripping that thought apart that the client says and on why, and we start to work through it, we just sort of accept that, like, yeah, it's true, it is a lot. We look at it and we're like, oh my gosh, they're right. It introduces $8,000 a month from what they spend right now, increase.
Right.
Okay, can't do it. But that's often not true. And I'm going to tell you why, if you don't mind, because I think this is important. If I'm ranting too long, you can stop me.
No, do it. This is why you're here.
Okay. And it's because, okay, let's think about the current climate in the economy, right? People like have no idea what's going on, right? There's tariffs, there's not tariffs, there's tariffs, there's 250% tariffs. Now there's 25. Customers, like clients, companies, are scared to make any big moves in any direction. So what am I seeing across the board? Projects are in decline. That's not just because of the economy. It's also because the more that we get into SaaS world, the less projects are actually needed. So you actually should be forecasting your project team to probably be shrinking or at least changing. That's a different conversation we should have sometime. But at the very least, right now, projects are hard to sell because they don't know what their company looks like in a year or two from now.
Yeah.
This is the perfect time to get them to buy that project to go SaaS for the thing that they're already like that the vendor already has a SaaS version of. Because if they've had a project on their books to upgrade all their infrastructure, go to the latest version of the on-prem, upgrade all the endpoints with the latest version, upgrade the servers, the hardware, or Azure, or whatever else. There's a lot of money involved in the implementation, the hardware, and all that. And guess what? In like 5 years, we have another capital expenditure. So what most VCIOs are not doing is forecasting all these capital expenditures now, and then in another 5 years, and in another 5 years, here's what it looks like now, and in 5 years, and in 10 years, this is our total spend.
Mm.
And guess what? Like, you have to hold on to that. So if your company gets cut in half next year because things are unstable, you still bought that infrastructure and you can't sell it for what you put into it. But
That's
guess
right.
what? The SaaS versions are almost always by user.
Mm-hmm.
So if your company gets cut in half next year, we can actually cut your licenses and we can cut your costs in half next year if that happens. We can actually now scale your technology needs in all facets to the size and growth of your company instead of like these big expenditures that are locked in. And now when like, this is like a perfect time actually to start talking about this stuff. But those are ROI and sort of like executive level
That's right.
discussions that require some business acumen that is more than, well, a project is expensive. And guess what? If they even want to amortize that better, like, you could up their seat price to say, like, you know what? Like, we get it. You don't want to do any big upfront costs right now. We're going to up your seat price a little bit and we're going to help you do this move to SaaS for you. And most of these vendors will do that migration for you from on-prem to SaaS. It is a small project most of the time. The big learning curve, the big push is on the customer side to learn the new thing, to adopt it. But if you've communicated effectively the gains long term for their company, that's probably a really worthwhile thing.
That's right.
There's a lot more to say, but that's
No, there's so many nuggets in what you've shared right now. I want to kind of harken back to where we started when we talked about the status quo and then like what needs to change. Step number one was adjusting the mindset, and to open up your horizons to what's out there and be forward thinking about what's best for the client. And then it led to this conversation about positioning yourself as a true VCIO, not what maybe the industry has started to accept as a VCIO, which is just a technologist with a new title that is fulfilling an obligation to the client to the best of their ability. But the key that you mentioned is that lack of business acumen. And there's a lot of things that you've shared today that I am not qualified to have strong opinions on because I am not a technologist. But that one I have strong opinions on. Our ability to have business conversations with our customers separates the IT guys from the service providers entrenched strongly as business partners with their customers through thick and thin.
sure.
And I absolutely love that was like, that's the biggest takeaway I heard from the rant, as you called it, was that we need to level up our game when we step into the room with the customer. And you made a comment, they're only working with you because they've acknowledged they are incapable of approaching their own technology's scalability and the ability to even leverage it the way that it should be. That's why you're in the room. And the paradox is that so often the provider works so hard to win the deal and then immediately takes dictation from the customer. So this is how it shall be. And we've surrendered that executive leadership role for our own customers, where it's like, no, I am in this room because you need me. And by virtue of that fact, we together under my leadership, virtual, fractional, or however else you might articulate it, we're going to move forward and make good choices as a result, put plans in place and move. And that's different than a technologist, though, that stereotypical IT guy and someone who understands technology but also knows how to articulate outcomes to the business leader. We have only about 5 to 10 minutes before I want to wrap up with some Q&A. We've had a lot of great comments in the chat that I've been negligent in bringing to the forefront just because we've been on a roll, you and I, Matthew. I'm just going to cherry pick a few that I think we can make some quick comments on. Blake, the crime of technologists is thinking that they know what is best all the time. Yeah, what would your response to that be, Matthew?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that in a nutshell. That's yeah, and that's the whole mindset thing I'm talking about. Exactly. I think the mentality, the mindset that we need is that we probably don't know what's best all the time, and we need to keep questioning it over and over and over and over again.
That's right.
And then that lets us make better decisions.
our man Randy, VCIOs only do that when they're pushed to. It's not something they gravitate towards because of what you mentioned earlier. The VCIO isn't getting a seat at the right table with the right audience and understanding what matters to the company. Yeah, that's really validates a lot of the stuff that I just shared, right? Like you're having the wrong conversations with the wrong people. And so often we've surrendered that leadership capacity to the customer, which is wild. It'd be like a patient walking into a consultation with the surgeon and cracking their knuckles and saying, "All right, doc, this is how it's going to go." And the doctor saying, "Yes, master, we'll do it your way." Like,
Yeah.
what? No, that's bonkers. Yet we see that all the time. What are your thoughts on that, Matthew?
Yeah, there's so much responsibility in what Randy just said. There's so much responsibility during the sales process to level set and get the right expectations to say that this is the room we have to be in with the actual decision makers, not your IT manager.
Yeah.
IT manager presents budgets and asks. That's what I do. Like, that's what we do. Like, your IT manager wasn't capable or competent, we won't say those words, to make these decisions. And so you brought me in to supplement. And so now it's like this weird game of telephone is not going to do the job. And so I think we have really, really important expectation setting to do when it's sold, to say this is the seat that we have to sit in or we can't be effective. Or just don't sell them that, right? Like, if we're trying to sell technology leadership and they're only going to let us talk to the IT guy, then maybe rip it out. Because, like, what value are you going to bring? Like, that's a weird, it's a weird thing to sell something that can't be delivered.
That's
I've
right.
never understood it.
I completely resonate with that. I want to take a moment before we kind of roll into a conclusion and open it up for Q&A with a lot of our viewers. And once again, I want to thank you if you've been spending some time with us on the stream today, or if you're watching this back later. Your input and collaboration on all this is invaluable. We appreciate that you're here. What are the consequences? Okay, so just to frame it and to harken back to where we started to where we are now, we talked about the status quo and its need for the provider's mind shift to adjust, to change, and then to ultimately evolve and elevate into that leadership role with their customer, right? Where they're confidently taking their customer through. If that never happens, and I think for a lot of providers that it doesn't happen or it happens too little too late, what are the consequences of ignoring it and staying in that IT guy world?
We're fit of profit. You can't, like, you won't be profitable, or at least your profit will suck. Like, so think about this. Any customer that you have where they have a bunch of servers that exist for file server access, print, and IAM, like identity access, right? Like, any of those that still exist today that you haven't just lifted and shipped to 365 with SharePoint, you're just suffering for that. And I know that there's some edges there, right? Like, SharePoint can only take so much data. There's times where this won't work, but the large majority, right? And I'm going to get back to that in a second. But what happens is every single time, or the app server that has the SaaS version and you accept to keep their big app, like, an RDS farm and gateway and broker, and the app servers and the SQL servers, you keep all this, and they need an H8. You keep all of that instead of pushing them to the SaaS thing. What happens? Every single server, and by the way, this is a really fun thing to do. Go look at how each client and write down how many servers they have, and then put down their average tickets, right? Go figure this out, and you're going to see some stuff that will make sense to you after I say this. Every server is a representation of complexity and support hours. What's your most expensive cost? Labor, right? Like employees, like payroll is your most your biggest expense in any business.
Yeah.
When you have infrastructure, you create the necessity for support, and not just support, but higher level support. Why? Because these app servers, we have a server that an RDS farm and all this stuff, right? What does that represent? Is we have a server, like the physical hardware or the Azure environment. We probably have a SAN. We have core switching now. We have the access switch. Obviously, we have more complex firewalls. We have an edge to protect, and we need like IDS and IPS and all this stuff. We have external vulnerability scanning, because if that app server is externally facing, We need to lock that down. We should have a reverse proxy. We should have a WAF. Nobody has all this stuff. There's now in the host, right? We have like configurations there. Maybe we have multiple hosts. We have the data center. We have all their sites. And so we have tunnels between all of those. Every single one of these layers, right? All of those need support. All of them will break at some point, right?
Yeah.
You could make the choice if you would push hard enough and believe that this is a real thing. If you push hard enough, you could get rid of all that, or half of it, 25% of it, some of it, get rid of some of it. I think it's a really stupid concept to say that I can't get rid of all of it, so I'm going to keep all of it. Like every reduction is a reduction.
That's right.
Every thing that you have to support is less labor, which means what is that? It's literally more profit in your pocket every time you decide to not push that customer to the thing that eliminates all of the support stuff.
That's right.
You did to be less profitable. So that's the quickest way I can think to explain it. But
no, I think you're right on the money. In my experience, I see all the time small to medium-sized IT service providers that are spread way too thin, and they're at the mercy of their customers because each one, it represents tremendous cost to them in terms of labor, in terms of the technology that they have to support, and the points of failure where they find themselves constantly chasing their own tail. I do have high empathy for the challenge of going through the process of auditing all of that, because especially if you've been in business for 5, 10, 15 plus years in your venture, it's very likely that a lot of your customers have accrued technical debt, and you yourself have accrued technical debt. And there's a lot of pebbles in the shoes that you've just been accepting. So I think you made good points. It's going to take a step back to evaluate the world you find yourself in and identify with each customer where you can make those improvements, quality of life improvements, where you can still deliver, not in many cases, not just the same value, but in a lot of cases, better value to your customer, and reduce your costs and reduce the time. So I think you're right on the money there. We have about 5 minutes left. So if you are watching this, you have the experts on you at your disposal right now. So we're going to roll into a brief Q&A. If anybody wants to pick Matthew's brain or mine for whatever it's worth, and drop something in the comments. Give us a stumper. Give us something that you'd love to like throw a curveball at Matthew or me. Like, well, what about this, Jonathan? What about this, Matthew? And while we're waiting for someone to furiously type in the chat what they'd like to offer up to us as a challenge, I would like you to take just a couple minutes, Matthew, and talk about Fulcrum and why people should consider connecting with you after this call and the best way for them to do that.
Yeah, thanks, man. I think the reason that you need to do it is because everything that I'm saying to like step away and look at what you're doing with an unbiased opinion and not through the lens of limitation that you will subconsciously have. You need somebody else to look. I really firmly believe this. You need somebody else to look that knows what they're looking for. I decided a long time ago that whenever I can pay for knowledge instead of suffer for it, I'm going to pay for it, right? What I will charge to look through your problems and what you're doing, you will save. Like you'll suffer more than it. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. So
yeah.
The best way to get a hold of me, it's on that fulcruminsights.io. I've got a little contact form that'll get your info to me, and we can set up a little call and talk through it. But yeah, I think that's like the closing thing is I wouldn't really offer what I'm saying unless I was positive that the investment would make you more. And that's my entire focus all around is ROI.
I love it. I love it. Here's the curveball from our man, Randy. Matt, now that you've had time away from your previous MSP and had headspace to build and think bigger picture, what advice do you have for aspiring MSPs or fractional CIOs or CTOs about how they approach technology and their customer base? Well, that's just a general call for advice, not a curveball per se, but you'll have fun with it either way. Matthew, take it away.
Yeah, advice for the MSPs. I think it would just be maybe like the biggest piece of advice is just to make sure that you don't have the mindset that just because you can't do all of it, that you do none of it, right? Like at the very least, you should look at all your customers that only have print, file, and IAM requirements, and get rid of all the servers. That any client that has just those few things, just take them to the cloud, right? Like it's the easiest thing. Maybe it's only 2 of them, maybe it's 5 of them, but it's still a step, right? And I think that we get this mentality that if we can't do it all, we'll do nothing. So I think that you just keep doing as much as you can.
That's right.
And from the fractional side for CIOs and CTOs, that would just be to work on yourself. Go read business books, start businesses yourself, like spend more time in business than technology.
Yeah.
Because you can, I sometimes think the people that understand business better than technology are a better technologist at this point, which is, I don't know, maybe the wrong way to say that, but you get my point. There's so many blank spots if you don't understand that the business is to make money, not to do tech.
They're two different languages for sure. Technology and business are two different languages. And in many cases, we make the false assumption that if I'm good at one, I'm good at the other. And that is not necessarily true. In fact, many cases, it's obviously untrue as you find yourself in conversations with customers and prospects and clients, and they're not listening to you. And it's often because the reason a customer doesn't listen to you isn't because you don't know what you're talking about. It's because you don't understand what's important to your customer. And that's not a technology thing. That's a business thing. So that's a great note to end on, and something that all of us can take away from today. Matthew, we are so thrilled that you spent some time with us in Scofie Sessions today. And we are so grateful for everyone who joined us live on LinkedIn and YouTube. And if you watch this back later, we hope that you say hi in the comments. I'm Scofie. I'm the partner matchmaker. You can learn more about us at findmyitpartner.com. And we're going to wrap up here. We're going to go to an end title card for a few seconds, and you can follow us on the other socials, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for being here, Matthew.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It was awesome.